The public library, in the sense of a tax-supported, open-to-all, government-run institution, is essentially an American idea, or at least the United States was the first nation to implement the notion. To be fair, the British had been heading the same way for a while, but as we shall see, Boston Public Library was the first such library to open its doors. Because Boston was the first in the United States, it became the model for many, many public libraries that opened subsequently to that day in 1854. There were, and still are, consequences to having Boston Public as a model, and we shall explore some of them downstream in the course. The idea of a public library, variously defined, had been floating around the colonies and the then young United States for a long time. Books were important to both the northern Europeans who settled the eastern part of the continent and the Spanish moving into what is now the southwestern United States. The Spanish colonies never really developed anything beyond private book collections. In the East, as we shall see, it was a different story. The search for a workable system of library funding occupied the colonial and early federal periods of the United States. I'll make you an argument that libraries in general were part of an idea, particularly after the Revolution of 1776 and the Constitution of 1789, that a working democracy required an informed electorate. There are, I think, three institutions that arose out of this idea during the 19th century. All took a while to work out the operational details, but by the end of the 19th century, all were well in place. First was the development of free distribution of publications generated by the government to libraries across the country. Early legislation in 1813 eventually led to the government documents depository system that is with us today. Secondly was the move of education from private enterprise to public responsibility. By the end of the 19th century, the vast majority of kindergarten through PhD education had become the responsibility of the state. And I should mention that by state, I mean government at all levels, not necessarily just state governments in particular. Thirdly is the move towards the tax-supported, open-to-all agency of the government that is the American Public Library. By the end of the 19th century, that was the model for public libraries and has not changed much to this day. The depository system is federally funded. The impulse to move education into public responsibility was largely driven by state governments. The public library was, and remains, a truly community-based phenomenon. And on that note, on to the written lecture.